All right, so we have our object UV'd, and we have all that stuff done. Now, the next part that I'm going to want to worry about is the process of baking like reference maps so that we can go ahead and texture onto this model. Now, the reason why I want references for texturing is because if I go ahead and just export a UV map into Photoshop and I work on that texture inside of Photoshop, or I could always work on it in ZBrush as well, but I'm going to choose Photoshop just because it's a lot easier there. Anyways, the reason why I want reference points is because if I go ahead and just export that, what I'm going to get is I'm going to get much like the UV maps, like you've seen before. If I go ahead and just press on this object, and you know what, I probably should just choose a different kind of material. Anyways, if I go ahead and go into here, and I go ahead and flatten, and turn off the polyframe, if I export something like this into Photoshop, well, I'm going to have a problem because I don't know where any of the stitches are. I don't know where any of the seams are or where anything is on these UVs. I don't have any landmarks to speak of. So I can't really start painting on this because if I start painting on this, then the model detail will not match the texture detail. So what I have to do is I have to go ahead and do something like, well, in this case, I'm going to have to bake out a map so that it can be applied to this, or rather, something that is in this shape, as in the UV shape, but has also its texture detail painted on or baked on so that I can use to, for the painting process. So let's go ahead and do that. First of all, I'm going to go back into my regular mesh here. Okay, so we have my model here. I'm going to just go ahead and just change the material. And I'm going to be working on this shirt most of all because it's going to calculate faster. So I'm just going to go ahead and just select that object. And in here, in the tool menu, I'm just going to turn off the subtool right now. Well, here's the thing. I want to go ahead and create an ambient occlusion mask or not a mask, but I want to create an ambient occlusion map and one based on cavity. Well, how do we do that? And I did kind of give it away, but we want to bake stuff out. Well, there's a few ways that I could do that. I could either go ahead and just go into the displacement map menu. I could bake out a texture map out of here, and I'm going to explore this thoroughly to an extent. In the next video set, which I'm going to be dealing with exporting and retopology and all that goodness. We could also do something like, I could just go ahead and new from UV check. I could do that. And if I press this, of course, what I'm going to get is I'm going to get a map like I've spoken about before. But again, this is all flat, so I can't really use this. Or I can also use the normal map, and I can calculate a normal map from this. There's a few disadvantages to this. One, namely being that this will give me a colored map that's going to have all sorts of colors, and it's probably not the best to be used as a texture reference detail kind of texture map. The displacement map will actually work out a lot better, I think. These ones are actually pretty good, so if you want, you could always use this one. Again, if you want. What I'm going to do is instead of actually going ahead and calculating a displacement map and having to go through, the process of exporting this map by lowering the subdivision level of this and, et cetera, and having to worry about any of these settings, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the masking menu. And the reason why I'm going to go into the masking menu is because in here, I can mask, like ZBrush basically lets me mask by ambient occlusion or by cavity. That way I can affect the model. I can affect, like, for example, the surface detail of this, but I could tell ZBrush not to affect any of the seams or any of the stitching or any of that stuff. So I could paint on the very top of or bottom of any surface without ever having to worry about me being able to affect parts of the model. So for now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and go to mask by cavity, because this is faster than ambient occlusion. Mask ambient occlusion actually takes some time to calculate, So when I do this, I'm actually going to take a pause from the video, and I'm going to come back when it's finished calculating. But mask by cavity actually happens pretty fast. So I'm going to go ahead and just press mask by cavity, and I'm going to wait. Now, here's a few things I should note. When you're masking by cavity, one good thing to note or want to follow is you can see this is kind of rough. Not very nice at all. So one thing you could do is, of course, change your profile of your mask. But at the same time, what I will do is I'm going to go ahead and just go into the geometry tab, and I'm going to, for now, subdivide only this shirt. So there's a few things you could do. You could either extract this and make a separate object just for this. And right now I'm just going to go into solo mode. I'm going to go ahead and just, I should turn it off. I'm going to subdivide this model once more until I have just a little bit more geometry. And in this case, right now I have 7 million polygons. And this will smooth out some of the, texture detail that I have here, or model detail that I have there. Now, what I can do is I can go back into my masking. I can go ahead and just mask by cavity. I'm going to wait a few seconds here until it calculates what it needs to do. And we have our result. If we zoom in, you'll notice that it's all masked exactly as I wanted it to be. It's not 100% clean, but neither is my model. And yeah, so now I could go ahead and, I have a mask on my model, but how do I use this inside of Photoshop? Well, there's a bottom all the way at the bottom, a button. Did I say bottom at the bottom? Anyways, okay, so there's a button at the end, at the bottom of this menu, create alpha. If I press this button, it's going to create an alpha, and it's going to send it all the way out here into the alpha menu. So I'm just going to wait until it does it. And ZBrush is taking its time. And I hope it doesn't crash. There we go. Usually it doesn't crash, but anyways, it was acting up weird. We have, if we look into the alpha button here, we have our alpha map created. Awesome. So, what else should I say about this? Well, if I go into the UV map menu here, you'll notice that by default, whatever maps you bake inside of ZBrush right now, they will always be set to 2048 size or resolution. I can up this to, for example, 4096 in the UV map menu. And when I do this, if I, for example, create a displacement map or a texture map or a normal map, or any of these maps, what's going to happen is ZBrush will automatically draw from this number right here. So if I want a bigger texture, I can go ahead and now I could just press this button again. And now ZBrush is going to take all of this detail that I have in here, and it's going to create a texture. And if you look at the width and height, it is 4096 instead of 2048. So now I could take that, go to my alpha menu and export. And I'm going to export into my directory here. And of course, I'm going to go into this is the cavity. So I'm just going to go to shirt 02 or shirt cavity 02. And of course, this is important that you name it to the, so you can identify exactly what object this is, because I also am going to export my pants as well. So, and another thing I should also note is when you're naming stuff, try to, I could obviously name these shorts and shirt, but if you just take a glance at your directory structure, pants and shirt are just a lot easier to identify. So shirt cavity 02, that'll do. I'm going to press OK. And next, I'm going to calculate a mask ambient occlusion. Now, for the process of texturing, either one of these will work just fine. You don't need both, but in case you want both, that's fine. Now, what I should note now is before I go ahead and do this, it really is good practice to just go ahead and clear whatever mask you have. I could either press the clear button, or I could press and hold Control on my keyboard, and just draw a rectangle and let go outside of my model, and it's going to clear whatever I have in here. And now I'm going to press mask ambient occlusion. And I am in fact going to pause recording when I do this, and you'll see why. I'm going to press it, and I'm going to start seeing the progress of the baking process in here, and it's going to take a while. As you can see, it's barely moving. And it's telling me it's going to take an hour. I don't want to wait an hour, so I'm just going to press escape. What I will do, however, is I'm going to go down a lower level in a geometry tab. I'm going to delete the higher subdivision level, and I'm going to press that button again. Instead of taking an hour, it's only going to take a few minutes now. You have to remember that the more detail your model has, the longer it's going to take to calculate, obviously. There's just a lot more polygons to go through. In this case, every single time you subdivide in here, you have 4 times as many subdivided polygons. So level 5 has 4 times more polygons than level 4. So, keep that in mind. If I subdivide this once more, I don't have 1.9 million polygons, I end up with 7 point something. So, I'm just going to go ahead and just press the mask ambient occlusion button again. And now you can see that the bar is moving, in fact, faster. And usually what ends up happening inside of ZBrush is I usually end up getting a sort of like a flicker. And right now it's telling me it's going to take another 4 minutes, and this is a lot better than 50-something minutes. I don't know why it grows that exponentially, that much. I mean, it's not exactly 4 times more. I mean, 4 times more would be about, 16 minutes. So I'm not really sure why it would take 50-something. But anyways, the bar is growing. It's taking some time. I'm going to pause for a second here, and I'll be back in a sec. And I'm back, and what did I say? Usually, this process ends up stopping somewhere along the lines, or along the line, and what ends up happening is ZBrush it's still continuing to process this data. The bar is just not moving on the screen. This is okay. The application has not crashed. It just means that I have to now wait, and when this whole process of baking this or calculating this mask from ambient occlusion, once it's done, this bar will just disappear, and I'm going to see my result on here. And I'm going to go back into pause mode. And we are back again. Okay, so what do we have here? Well, we have the ambient occlusion pass, and you can see that a lot of the details are a lot more subtle. I mean, I can't really tell them in here. Of course, that's going to change once I go ahead and create a texture out of this. So I'm going to once again go ahead and just press the create alpha button. And as you can see here, our result is in here. Now, if you want to preview any of these maps, a little bit bigger than this, what you could of course do is you could go into the alpha menu, and you could go ahead and just create make texture button. Just press this button here. Hope I'm using my words properly. Anyways, go ahead and just press the texture button. And once in here, we go to crop and fill. And what's going to happen with this is it's going to clear the model off the canvas, and I am going to then fill, or ZBrush is going to fill the texture. It's also going to crop it to the actual texture, so your document size is going to change. I'll press yes, and we get something like this. Kind of big. So let's zoom out, and this is the result that you get from the ambient occlusion. Now what I could have done is I probably could have gone ahead and just lowered the intensity of the occlusion itself a bunch and did it again. And actually I think I'm going to do that. So let's go ahead and just go to color, clear. Let's go to document. And right now the resolution is kind of high. So I'm just going to lower it to something that's actually workable. I think that'll do. I'm just going to crop it. I'm going to place my model back in. Go to edit mode. I'm going to clear this. And I'm going to go ahead and just mask ambient occlusion once again, just with a lower occlusion intensity. And we're going to have to wait again. And I'm going to go into pause mode. And as you can see, when I was going for my thingy here, yeah, ZBrush kind of took a little pause. So let's pause. And I think we're back. So once again, I have calculated the ambient occlusion map. I'm going to look at the result. and I start to see a little bit more detail on the whatchamacallit on this shirt. You know what? I'm actually going to do this just one more time. I'm going to lower it down to a little bit below 1, and I'm going to press the button again, and she's going to start. And obviously this time when I go ahead for this menu, when I open up the menu here, ZBrush should have stopped, so I'm just going to go ahead and just press pause again. And we're back again. So let's go ahead and just click on this window here, and I think I'm seeing a little bit more detail, I'm not entirely sure. But anyways, whatever. The process of making your ambient occlusion maps is this. You could change your settings here. You know, I'm probably going to end up sticking with the mask by cavity, or not by mask by cavity, but with the cavity mask that I had. Anyways, what you have to do now is just go ahead and just create alpha. I'm going to create my alpha, and my result is like this. Anyways, so basically what I have here is I have my alpha, I have my texture, I can go ahead, or my cavity map, I can go ahead and just export all this. So shirt AO2, PSD, save as, and when you open it up all in Photoshop, 1 second. Again, when you open it up in Photoshop, you get your masks exactly like this. And now I know exactly where these parts are on the map. Now granted, again, you have details that are going to be kind of ugly. That's fine. For the most part, I just want to lay down a pattern. I want to put down some of these areas. You know, I basically want to map in some stitching onto, I basically want to draw in some stitching on the texture maps. But for the most part, I'm not really bothered with messy details like this, because quite frankly, all of this right now, this model, this character model, is very conceptual. I could actually reuse a lot of this model for the purposes of finaling this character, and I will be going over on how to do that in the next video set after, you know, the texturing one's done and over with. But as far as final texturing goes, you know, what I wanted to do with this video in particular is introduce the idea of texturing and how to go about it, and, you know, the different tools that you could use for the different, you know, cases. Again, usually poly painting is not the best idea for doing things like clothing. And if you want to work on character, poly painting is actually a pretty good idea. So I wanted to really go over the different tools and all this other stuff on, like, you know, for texturing a character. But where you texture, or if you actually follow my video sets, I could, for example, have done the character in the first video set exactly as I did it. I could have then retopologized my character, and then I could have done the texturing. Or I could have, instead of made a retopology, I could have started off with a finished model cage is inside of 3D Studio Max or Maya or Subdivide or any of the applications. I could have made my model there, and then I could have entered into ZBrush for texturing and drawing the finer details. So depending on where you're working or what you want your workflow to be, you know, you don't necessarily need to follow the way I'm doing this. You could be, again, what I'm kind of getting across here is you could do things in whatever sequence you like, whatever you feel comfortable with. And all I'm doing here is I'm just providing you with methods and tools and ideas on how to do things. But I'm not necessarily presenting a workflow. I'm basically trying to show you easy ways of texturing, easy ways of modeling, and I want to, you know, basically have discussions on good topology and the process of retopologizing and, you know, exporting out to other applications. But again, the workflow that you guys use is entirely yours. So anyways, with that said, the next videos should be within Photoshop for the most part. I will be utilizing the maps that I have created in this video, and I will go ahead and do things like, you know, create patterns that I'm going to be using for the shirt and the jeans. I will be going back between Photoshop and ZBrush, And then once I finish texturing the clothes, I am going to go over the model with just one more pass very quickly, but with probably no narration. I don't know yet, I haven't decided. And in there, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, again, go over the model very quickly, just fix some stuff up that I've been kind of wanting to fix, and finish up the character. And that's going to be the end of this video. Until, of course, the next video set, which, once again, is going to deal with retopology. It's going to deal with things like, you know, exporting the character to Cinema, Modo, wherever I feel like exporting him to, and rendering him outside. So until the next video, cheers.